Hello, good morning. So today I will be discussing to you the lesson 2 under module 3, which is the Biodiversity and Health Society. So I'll be giving you a quick discussion or video discussion for this specific topic, and then later on I will be giving you the activity equivalent for this topic as well. Okay, so under this was done already, the lesson 1. So we will now proceed to the lesson 2. So for the lesson 2, we have biodiversity and health safety. So hopefully at the end of this session or the end of this video discussion, we will all be learn how to determine the interrelatedness, society, environment, and health, how they are connected with each other. And then we all learn how to discuss the ethnics and implication of what is GMO, or the genetically modified organisms, and the potential future impacts of those GMO products, and to identify the importance of biodiversity and as a source of different biological sources. So at first we need to define what is biodiversity. I hope you were able to read this ahead of time because this was posted a month ago. Okay, so biodiversity is defined as the variety of life present in an ecosystem. So the biodiversity is important in how society benefits from it, and so on and so forth. So when we say biodiversity, bio is really comes from the word life, and diversity comes from the word variety. So when we say variety, or when we say biodiversity, it's actually uh, a different types of living organisms in a certain place. So let's say for example, uh, biodiversity functioning in an ecosystem that supplies, usually magod ang biodiversity, especially in, let's say for example, an biodiversity in marine life. We have kadtong mga algae, kadtong mga composer or decomposer, and the animals, or and the ang habitat, the biodiversity of the habitat of all the sea creatures living in the marine life. So when we say biodiversity, it's actually the contribution of all the animals or living things living in that certain place. So let's say for example, uh, we also have kung kinsa toy type of living organisms nga nagasupply og oxygen, nagasupply og clean water, nagasupply og pollination of plants, and so on and so forth. So if we don't have biodiversity, it really kanang wala tay future sa humanity, because we cannot live without biodiversity, or the life and the variety of the living organisms that somehow contribute for us to kanang live, or for us to breathe, or for us to continue living. So that is biodiversity. However, biodiversity also not it just a word, but it also applies to economics, like the one who made money, the one who contribute uh, kanang for us to keep afloat ang mga business. Those biodiversity of the economic itself is actually what is the biodiversity is also meaning. And then society benefits greatly from the richness of biodiversity, since human can source from nature biological resources such as, let's say for example, the farmers, the agriculture sectors, they provide food. The the medical aspect, or the medical sectors provide us medicine, vitamins, and so anything that would somehow heal or give us kana bang healthy body and mind. And then we also have the department of kanang energy, who give us electricity and so many other support in order for us to enjoy technology, what technology we are enjoying right now, and then and much more. So that is what we call diversity, the contribution to make us uh, continue functioning our daily lives. That's actually, so magdepende ra na siya kung asa siya nga aspeto ang iyang biodiversity. And then biodiversity in natural ecosystem. So when you say natural ecosystem, we have the marine life, we have the agriculture, and so many other things that naturally naa siya biodiversity nga gitawag. Can also regulate the climate. We have the food, pollination, water and air quality, water storage, decomposition of waste, which will be discussed later on. And when it comes to biodiversity and health safety, health and medicine is also involved. So since 2600 before Christ, people have been using plants to treat illness. Even now, if naatay bation, we can just get any plants or sometimes gali ka ng mga grass or ka ng mga scrubs lang from outside our house or from any other places nga naimutubo. Hence, the practice of herbal medicine was actually applied all over the world. Let's say for example kanang, I forgot the name, but kanang masakit og dengue, di ba? Instead of going to the hospital or instead of treating it with medicine, some folks or some kanang alternative medicine kana bang opt to take those plants kay proven and tested that it can actually heal those kind of diseases. And herbal medicine were also used in healing rituals and in a treatment of injuries resulting from wars or accident. So, not just herbal medicine, and then there are also some kind of kanabang ritual, especially the Chinese type of medicine, which most of them actually are into alternative type of medicine. And for example, we have here Salvia apenia. He is a Californian and was a herbal plant used by Indian tribes of Southern California to aid in childbirth and was believed to protect the immune system from respiratory ailments. So instead of using the modern type of modern type of delivering a baby or modern type of conceiving, instead he used alternative and he used alternative type of medicine. But anyway, as the time goes by, people are actually majority of the people are actually into kuan na kana bang the advanced technology when it comes to medicine, because although herbal and other alternative medicine are maybe effective, however there are also lots of fatalities katong mga morbidities because it is not actually diagnosed well. Because when we say good ka ng advance, or when we say ka ng medical in the medical field, di ba, usually we need to go through ultrasounds, x-rays, MRI, and so many other things for us to diagnose what's really the disease or what's really the sickness of that person, to diagnose it properly and somehow to treat the illness specifically. However, in kuan man god, long before, when we use alternative medicine and then we use herbal, we tend to heal the person holistic, meaning to say we don't know exactly what's the sickness or what's the ailment of that person, but we treat it as a whole because we don't know exactly what happened to that person. However, when we treat it using the alternative way, we tend to not to kanawurabag focus the illness but the holistic health of that person. And then and so many other things have actually, from using herbal, from using alternative medicine into series of advanced technology when it comes to medicine. Until now, everything is actually into science or into technology, wherein all the kanang diseases are much more let's say for example before, we all of the sickness that we have right now, kanang mga diagnosed karon nga mga sakit, maingon ta nga why before this ailments, this sickness are not existing, but now it already exists because of the advanced study researches about it. Mo nang nanggawas karon nga sakit because before unexplained, there are a lot of unexplained death when it comes to especially those that kanang nagconceive or katong mga nag-give birth or cancer or whatever sickness before. It was not specified well because we don't have the instrument, we don't have the devices, or we don't have the tools in order for us to diagnose exactly what is the illness. But right now, with the help and with the aid of the technological advancement when it comes to medicine, when it comes to medical, everything, all the diseases are actually put into place, and so that you know how to diagnose it properly, especially in computer science. There are mga AI, artificial intelligence, in order for us to help diagnose by using kana mga predictive analysis and so many other tools for us to diagnose the ailment. So that's the advancement, or that's the murabag breakthrough when it comes to health, and when it comes to health and medicine. So from before Christ to after Christ, and to what we have right now, to IR 4.0 or 5.0, Industrial Revolution. And then we also have food. So food is basic needs for human survival, of course. We cannot function well without the food. We might die without eating for 4 days or for 5 days. During the Stone Age, humans relied only on hunting and for foraging to get food. So they depended on what the ecosystem could really provide them. So when we say ecosystem, ecosystem is actually from the word ecological system, meaning to say that ecosystem is made up of all the living things and non-living things in the area. So this includes the animals, the plants, the other living things that make up the communities of life in an area. So an ecosystem also includes non-living materials, for example, water, rock, soil, and sand. We have the ecosystem. So mura siya og kanang ecological system wherein uh, we have kana murag burabag, it's a system wherein it's made up of kanang things that connected with that certain area of ecological life support. Okay, so as the earth population grew, the demand for food increases. So crops that can be grown were discovered, and cultivated animals were domesticated. So before, the way humans the way humans get their food is by hunting. So either they will also kill other animals for them to have food for their family, and then foraging to get food. But right now, as the technological advancement, as people are actually increasing, and then of course when the demand is high, ang supply kinahanglan taas pod, right? Because if the demand is high and then walay supply, it will really be a big chaos. So kung mutaas ang demand, dapat ang supply mutaas pod. Okay, so through that, people are tried to invent other ways for us, for them to survive, for them to get food, for them to maybe to increase the food supply for the demand of the people. And then throughout history, agriculture and cultivation evolved from picking desirable crops and breeding animals to maintain stable supply for food to last for long periods as of time, as preparation for the changing seasons and the possibility of natural disaster. If you are kuan, if you able to watch the ants nga title mo siguro to sa, it's actually a cartoon characters wherein before sa kanang mga rainy seasons, if makabantay mo sa mga ants, they're actually storing food for the season to come, for the rainy season to come, because if it's rainy season, dili na sila makakuhag food. So as much as possible, i-store nila ang pagkaon that at least makalong last until the change of the season nga mo store mo kihit kuha na sa silang food. So that is actually what the people long before are doing. So they tend to uh, s- uh, get food or store food for them to survive for another season, especially if the season is not really good for hunting food, or if the season is not really possible for them to supply or to get food for that certain period of time. Okay, farmers and fishermen rely on healthy ecosystem for their livelihood, meaning to say kung marine life nga ecosystem, uh, kinahanglan na enough nga algae, na enough nga whatever food those living species in the marine life is doing. Kay if not manggod, if it's not a healthy ecosystem, then they cannot get enough fish for them to store, if they cannot get enough fish or healthy fish for them to eat. So the benefits of biodiversity are necessary for the growth of many important crops. So about 39% of the leading 57 global crops needs birds and insects as pollinators. So that is what we call biodiversity. They are actually contributing to each other for them to produce something worthwhile. So agrobiodiversity is the result of careful selection and innovative developments by farmers, so fishers and other herders throughout the year. So the harvested crop varieties and non-harvested species in the environment that support ecosystem for food production fall under agrobiodiversity. So everything, all the living organisms, may it be cockroach, may it be ants or whatever it is, are actually contributing with each other for us to have what we have right now. So monoshade biodiversity is actually life, variety of animals and plants helping towards the survival of humanity, because without biodiversity it's impossible for human to survive. And then we also have the energy. So energy, humans rely on energy provided by ecosystems, so to do the necessary activities in order to survive, uh, to do the necessary activities in order to survive. So the Stone Age, heat energy from fire was used mainly for survival against harsh cold environment. So energy that comes from heat, which is fire, are actually one of the main survival for, especially for the cold environment, because during the Stone Age wala man sila yung mga houses with roof. Most of them are actually living in the cave. So uh, for them to survive in the cold environment, or for them to survive to whatever sickness they have because of the cold weather, they have to create fire. So if you will able to watch those movies nga mga karaan, which is wala na magid tay actual nga makita karon, although there are some of the people that actually live in the forest, or they're actually living in the remote areas, are actually still doing this kind of practices. So fire, also heat from fire are actually possible. Let's say kanang mag we're cooking, and then for communication with nearby tribes in the form of smoke. So when there are actually emergencies for that certain tribe, they tend to make a fire so that mo smoke siya, and then it will actually signal that they need help and there's something wrong in that tribe. So those kind of energy are actually a form of energy that was actually used by the Stone Age, or that actually used by the people long before. And then in 400 BC or before Christ, water energy or hydropower was used by ancient Greeks and Romans for irrigation. So in 347 after death, or uh, Christ is was resurrected already, or after death, the earliest known oils wells were developed in China. So there's a lot of energy that was going on before. It was actually raw energy or pure energy, but right now, since since there's a lot of kanabang, the population are actually increasing so high, so there's a lot of kuana kanang inventions, innovations wherein we can use that energy in a form of heat, or in a form of water, into something very useful. Let's say for example, our electricity right now are usually comes from the water energy, and there are also some electronics or electricity that comes from the air energy. So we have natural energy that actually converted into something more useful, or into something that many people will benefit. And then there's 1820s, natural gas was used as a source of light, although the lack of pipeline infrastructure made it distribution challenging. So that is actually a natural gas wherein we can have our electricity, or we can have the power of our like the gasoline and so many other things that is actually people are benefiting now. So we will proceed to the water storage and flood control. So since this is also one of the biodiversity, so the earliest civilization were situated near rivers or lakes with made their livelihood depended on water. So if you notice, even until now, there are still some civilization who prefers to stay, although kapila na nagbagyo, kapila na nag unsa pa na diha, tsunami and so many other natural disasters, people are still living wherein it is really dangerous for them to live. Let's say for example, they're living beside those volcanoes, those kanang situated near the river or the lakes, wherein natural disasters like flood, like tsunami, and so many other natural disasters are prone. They're actually prone to danger, but still they prefer to live there because that is where their livelihood comes from. Let's say for example, if you're a fisherman, of course you will live beside the river, or behind, or near the river, because that is where your livelihood comes from. That is where your family survive, because of the food or because of the livelihood that you can get from the water or from the river. So with increasing demand for potable and drinkable water, along with the discovery of groundwater in 2000 years ago, so because of the advancement, because of the update, because of the murabang breakthrough, people are innovating, people are inventing new ways for them to live comfortably. So there are water that is being converted into a drinking water, and then water sources of water are not just coming from one source, but many other sources. That's also one of those is the groundwater. And biodiversity in forests plays an unquestionably crucial role in water resources. Forests provide natural filtration and storage system to provide fresh water. So water also comes from biodiversity in forest, but maybe because we have, although we call it natural disaster, but however, a natural disaster also was created. Oh, the reason for natural disaster was also undeniably because of maybe the people also, because we tend to, let's say for example, kanang mga deforestation, kanang mamutulog kahoy and so many other things. That's why flood are actually dali ra siya mo baha compared before, because we don't have any enough big trees that can withhold the water, that can somehow withhold those rummaging kanang water from the forest. So that is why. So the roots and leaves of trees created condition to promote the infiltration of rainwater into the soil to fill the aquifer system with groundwater. Mo ni nahitabo sa biodiversity, dili na siya equal. It's not functioning well because people tend to abuse the use of biodiversity, abuse the natural resources into making, into maybe hopefully they're morabag deniably they try to make it in a good purpose, but when more yun na, if you done anything that is too much, it is dangerous already. So flooding is mostly known for its adverse effect, but also some have benefits. So that is one of the reasons the flooding and all on many other natural disaster, they call it climate change, because maybe because of the kanabang overuse or abusing the natural resources that was giving to us. So the biodiversity, the life adversity, or the life variety that somehow contributed to all the natural resources that we have right now are actually imbalanced na siya because of the creation of kanang harmful creation of the human itself. So air and water treatment. So air and water treatment is also part of the biodiversity that we are having right now. This is also the basic needs for humans. So some of the gases considered as criteria pollutants as NOx and 03 in moderate amounts contribute to the healthy ecosystem and balanced biodiversity. However, due to excessive concentration of these gases, the capacity of environment to cleanse itself and to be resilient is diminished. Also, air itself, we have some gases or some air that is actually caused by the natural air resources, that is caused by our natural resources, is actually diminishing its kanang kuan, murag na diminish ng iyahang resiliency. That is because of the too much advance or kana bang too much experimentation. So we tend to forget that it has its own biodiversity that murag naturally yun siya made for that. So excessive nitrogen stimulates the growth of nitrogen loving plants. This is more on the kanang biology na gyud, no. But we'll just try to explain this in a more simple way. So negative impacts on vegetation reduce the sink of capacity, so like carbon monoxide or ozone. So uh, the more manggod that to we tend to make it more advanced, or apply too much scientific solutions when it comes to air and water treatment, uh, we tend to affect the natural biodiversity of the air and the water treatment. So it somehow, the negative impact is somehow mubalik rapod sa humanity. Okay, so we have stored pollutants na siya adverse effect when it comes to soil. Montang naatay mayon nga organic ni, this is organic kana bang vegetables, there's organic fruit and vegetable. But it's somehow, I heard from before that we can call a fruit or a vegetable organic if ang kang soil nga gigamit is organic as well. So bisan miingon pa ta nga kani nga plants or kani nga fruit, this is organic, kay wala gigibutang nga seedlings ani, kutkuton pagali ni siya sa kanang worms and so many other things. Pero you really cannot call it organic unless ang soil niya is organic, meaning to say ang soil niya is actually 5 years or 6 years na siya nga wala gid siya na naka-experience og any artificial kana mga fertilization ana siya. So because everything right now is actually dili na gyud, even though naa ka sa bukid nagpuyo or some other plantation asa ka nagpuyo, we cannot call it organic anymore because by the air, the water nga niagi ana, all of those biodiversity have somehow affect the modern way of for us to cultivate those natural resources. So let's say for example kanang mga exports, even here in Tagbina, the one that we have, the Sumipro, ang yuta diha, it's really hard for other farmers to plant anymore because the soil is not healthy anymore because of too much spray of fertilizer. So bisan mais pa maibutang diha or so many other things, dili siya mo grow into a healthy murag output, dili healthy mo output because the soil is not healthy anymore, the air is not healthy anymore. Okay, so those negative impacts can somehow affect the biodiversity of the natural resources or the natural biodiversity of our environment. Okay, so we also have the protocol on the biodiversity. So there's a need to enhance the implementation of regulations and worldwide protocols. So when bisan asa ka nga part of the world, there is actually protocols on biodiversity, meaning to say procedures and steps, the do's and don'ts when it comes to biodiversity. Okay, so it is linked to the Convention of Biological Diversity. So we proceed now to what is genetic modification. So GMO. So although maybe some of you are not familiar with it, but all of us are actually recipient of genetic modification. Maybe kita masiguro tanan nakakaon og kuano Jollibee. Jollibee is actually, they are actually using genetically modified organism. Kanang gisagol nila sa spaghetti. Oh, that's actually genetically modified organism, meaning to say artificial food na siya. We if we are going to check the we think that it's a meat, it's actually not a meat, it's actually genetically modified or GMO. So a genetically modified organism or GMO is one whose genetic materials DNA has been added to or remove or change, meaning to say mura siya og kana bang replacement for natural food. Let's say pwede siya replacement sa meat like chicken, beef, pero made of other organism siya. Pwede siya algae, pwede siya, if you are familiar with tofu, that is actually a replacement for meat. Kay same ang makuha nimo nga nutrients, protein, which is the beef and the pork and the chicken is a great source of protein, but the replacement nga we have those algae or sa nga mga replacement are actually having the same amount of protein, although the taste is almost the same but not exactly the same. So genetic engineering allows scientists to insert desired traits or features into an organism, enhancing the crop resistance. So for instance, the artificial manipulation of the DNA would never happen in nature. It replaces a traditional method of selective breeding, a common and completely safe practice used by growers. So usually karon ang kanang mga crops na to, kanang mga the feeds, kanang feeds gihatag nato sa mga farm, sa mga herds, kanang chicken, kanang mga poultry nato are actually genetically modified organisms. So equivalent na siya, same amount of maybe nutrients, but it's not exactly the same anymore. So but do we need GM to feed the world? Yes, because of bang increasing populations that we have. The natural resources is not enough anymore. Maybe gali on the future, our future generation, it's not the air, the oxygen that we breathe is not enough anymore because we are actually exceeding to the number of population that should actually live in the butang talang in the universe or in the world. That's why, although if you watch movies, there's a certain movie it's actually a series in Netflix nga, I forgot the title, but it's actually futuristic. The air in the earth is not enough for the people. That's why ang kadtong mga tigulang nila, kadtong mga tigulang less healthy people, they are actually being kanang sacrifice para mabuhi ang kadtong mga batanon, para mabuhi ang mga future generation. So somehow pwede pud nato actually disclaimer lang, uh, somehow makuan pod nato of what really is happening in the world right now, the pandemic, because there's kuan mango, there's an actually agenda, kani agenda gini sustainable development approach or development agreement, wherein the goal of the world good, World Health Organization or some other world organization, to decrease the population. Usa gyud na to decrease the population. Ang ubang nga mga country, they have two-child policy. Ang ubang nga mga country, they are practicing uh, abortion and so many other things or so many other procedure for them to lessen the population. However, there is a Philippines, because we are into religion, get Catholic religion. Abortion is not yet approved, and so many other things regarding ana is not yet approved. Samo makaingon ka nga this pandemic, this COVID-19 may be one way for the world to decrease the population, because if you notice, the COVID-19 will only attack, not only but somehow attack those less healthy people. So katong mga tigulang, katong mga less comorbidities, katong nagipang bati or nay mga sakit-sakit, and those that are prone into those less morbidities, less healthy people, and those senior citizens, because maybe somehow in the future oxygen that we breathe right now, it's not enough anymore because of the increasing population. So mo na siya, because we don't have enough biodiversity anymore. Ang bukid nato gihimo ng subdivision. Ang mga natural resources, the supply of natural resources are actually they make into factories and so many other things. So dili na siya ka-supply enough to the number of people, enough to the number of populations that we are right now. That's why we need genetically modified organisms for us to be fed, for us to survive. So genetically modified organisms, or genetically modification, is the process of altering the genetic makeup of our organism. So this has been done indirectly for thousands of years ago already. So controlled or selective breeding of plants and animals. So kana pong actually before mga 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I actually talked to someone from the DA, Department of Agriculture, regarding ESF, kanang kasagarang virus karon sa mga baboy nga until now it's still actually recurring gihapon siya, the ESF, the African swine flu, correct me if I'm wrong, ESF. So kana siya is actually not yet 100% solved until now, because there are a certain company that is actually kuan kana bang nagga-produce sila genetically modified nga mga protein like pork, pero dili gyud siya pork. It's actually a genetically modified algae siya nga gihimo siya equivalent sa pork. So somehow murag diha mo padong, because we don't have enough food anymore. That's why there are some industries, food industries, that supplying genetically modified nga pork that is made of algae. Now, although somehow medyo scary siya, but actually if you really look into it, it can actually it is a way for humanity to survive. Now, if you have some time to watch the YouTube, I actually watched this long before pa. Dugay-dugay na ko kakitaan ni. And then, when I prepare earlier this morning for this lesson, then I happened to look for it. This is actually the unsa ka ng vlog of Erwin Yusuf, wherein there are some example of meat substitute food experiments. So by this vlog, you can see that you can actually notice that there are certain equivalent of food that is good for the good purpose. So I hope you'll be able to watch this. The title is Does Nico Bolsico Know What He Is Eating? It's a meat substitute food experiment, because Nico Bolsico is actually kuan ni siya, is actually supplying kanang mga beef, kanang mga tenderloin, kanang mga really big chunks of beef, and then somehow mag-experiment si Irwan Yusuf to make a food that is a meat substitute instead of using the real beef. So I hope you'll be able to watch this. So for now, this will be the end of my discussion regarding biodiversity and health safety. I hope you'll be able to get a lesson, or you understand the lesson, or you understand the discussion somehow. Then if you have any questions or clarifications, please do not hesitate to inform me, or to uh, ask me in the message. Thank you, and